But it's especially bad news for those of you who drank the Kool-Aid of go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and invest in a 401k or get a job with a pension. And the reason, is because the real big consequence of all this is that pensions almost died in England. So all the guys who drank the Kool-Aid, all you had to do was have a safe, secure job, and the government pension would save you, or you were a firefighter or a police officer or a teacher. Your pensions would save you. And so our special guest today is nothing but bad news, but it's good news if you take evasive action while we still have time, because thank God the English pound almost died. We would have killed millions of people with pensions, and you still have time to recover while they try and figure out what's happening next. So it's very exciting times, but the biggest issue of all are pensions. So this is the book here, is Who Stole My Pension? Came out in 2000 and is written by myself and Edward Siddell, Ted Siddell here. And he's going to be talking to you what happened with the English pound, what almost happened to all the pensions that still might happen, but more how you can prepare for whatever is going to happen if you're counting on your pensions. That is, I'm going to say this, you guys may know my stories. My poor dad depended upon his pension until he lost it. And I'll tell you what, when you're in your 70s and you lose your pension, it's not funny. And so again, I came out with this book here, Who Stole My Pension? And it came out in 2000. We're now October 2022. Dates are important because things are changing so fast. I understand that you were put a censorship on you because you were writing about some of the people that were looting the pensions of certain states, now working for Biden. And didn't they tell you, keep your mouth shut?
They told me not to write any more about Gina Raimondo when she became Treasury Secretary, or the Secretary of Commerce.
So what would you say to all the millions of people with pensions, like the firefighters, police officers, school teachers throughout the world, because the pension theft, Who Stole My Pension? It's a big book here. And what happened in Rhode Island is chump change compared to what just happened in England with the crash of the English pound. But it's more than the crash of the English pound. It was a crash of their pensions. So again, this is October 2022. I'll say it again. Hurricane Ike hit in 2008 and Lehman collapsed. Hurricane Ian hits 2022 and the British pound collapses. Go ahead.
I mean, the first thing that listeners should understand is around the world, there are millions of workers who are counting on pensions set up by corporations or governments to provide for their retirement security. And these people rightly believe that they have been promised certain benefits and those promises will be kept. Unfortunately, as you know, Robert, most of these pension schemes are severely underfunded. Not enough money has been set aside to pay for the benefit that's been promised.
Can I add one more thing? With the stock market crashing, how does it affect pensions?
Well, the lower, you got two sides to a pension fund. One is your assets, and one is your liabilities. So if your assets fall in value and your liabilities don't, then you are even more severely underfunded.
Right.
Your average American pension fund is only like 70% funded.
And so that's why I wrote this book here in 2013. It's called Rich Dad's Prophecy, Why the Biggest Stock Market Crash in History is Still Coming. I got to change the still to it's here today. Mm-hmm. And all the guys with 401ks, IRAs, pensions all over the world, they're in serious trouble. So that's why this book here, Who Stole My Pension, that Ted and I wrote, it's affecting millions and millions of people. And I think it may require the biggest bailout in world history because old guys like me won't be able to retire. Now you go, well, I'm a young person, but what happens when your mom and daddy move in with you? What happens when your house, in the middle class, their house is their biggest investment and real estate prices are crashing? So this is a serious, serious, serious problem, which is one reason the Rich Dad Company was founded 25 years ago, because I always ask the question, what did school teach you about money? Nothing. So pay attention, because we may have some ideas that can save yourself, your family, and prevent your kids or your grandparents from moving in with you. But the biggest tragedy is coming up is called healthcare. I mean, that is going to be a major, major disaster, because Medicare and Social Security are toast. And we ain't seen nothing yet, because what happened in Rhode Island with Gina Raimondo was chump change compared to just what happened in England in September 2022. So, Ted, what happened in England in September 2022?
You know, Robert, as we talked about in Who Stole My Pension, pensions globally, not just here in the U.S., are at risk at this time. And in this past week in the UK, we saw the near collapse, according to some experts, of nearly 90% of all the pension funds in England. The near collapse of almost 90% of these pensions holding like over $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion in assets. And what happened was really a government policy-induced pension crisis. It was the government came out with a policy to reduce taxes in a highly inflationary environment. And so, which resulted in adding tens of billions of pounds to the government debt, fueling greater inflation and causing bond prices to fall. And so it was like sort of cascading effect. This government action had a disastrous impact on the pensions. And then the government had to scramble the next day to reverse itself to prevent what would have been the collapse of all of these pension systems.
You have any idea how many millions of, and the English pension system, since they travel throughout the world, that would affect people, English pensioners throughout the world.
Yeah, it would have. And many people are saying that while what happened, exactly what happened in the UK probably will not happen in the United States, or what happened in UK will stay in UK, there are plenty of red flags or warnings about things that could happen in this country with our pension systems.
And what do you see possibly happening?
Well, we start with the fact, as we often say on your program, Robert, is that the government agency backstopping 40 million Americans' pensions is itself bankrupt. So that's pretty bad. If your insurance company is bankrupt, then your insurance is worth nothing, right? I mean, unless taxes are raised to replenish the agency's coffers, which they claim they don't use tax money. They just don't pay their bills, I guess. But so that's a big red flag. And increasingly, these pensions in the U.S. are moving into high risk, high cost, very secretive investments, private equity, hedge funds, venture funds. And so we know less about what's in these pensions today than we did 20 years ago. Even with the internet and all this transparency that's available, we know less today. And the risks are greater, and the returns have fallen as well.
What Ted is saying, these pension funds have to take greater and greater risk because the returns aren't there anymore. And was it you was telling me that many of the pensions now are in Bitcoin and crypto?
94% of American government pensions are in crypto.
Wow.
According to a report that just came out this year.
Wow.
94%.
So let me explain why England is so important, is because the way they planned to pay for the pensions of the old guys like me was they would buy a bond, and they buy the bond and the bond would pay out. But as bond prices came down, the pension obligation did not stop. And so they had to borrow more or print more money to buy more bonds. So just by definition, when you borrow money to buy a bond, you're violating economics, because generally a bond is due to savings, and savings come when you have income minus expenses, you have savings. But now they were borrowing money for fake bonds to pay off these pensions. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, one observer in the Wall Street Journal said that what happened this last week in England was provided a warning to governments everywhere
Right.
of the dangers of the new economic era we are entering, which involves a toxic mix of politics, inflation, and higher interest rates. Very dangerous time,
Right.
and governments are printing money. Inflation is raging, and these pensions are already underfunded, and so they're in danger already. And there's reason to believe that they're far worse off than they're saying, because they're inflating the values of a lot of their investments, and they're increasing the use of leverage.
Right.
So leverage can be fatal, as you know, certainly in a pension context.
And one of the biggest public pensions in America is CalPERS, the California. What is this? What is the condition of CalPERS, the California pension for public employees?
Well, CalPERS recently sold a bunch of its illiquid private equity holdings, which they said were worth, $1. They sold it in the market for 90 cents. So that means that whatever that was a sign that whatever CalPERS is valuing their assets are at, whatever they're valuing those assets are, they're probably worth less. So CalPERS is already severely underfunded, but the truth is it's probably another 10 to 15% underfunded than the numbers are showing.
As the stock market continues to crash because they keep raising interest rates, markets keep crashing, it makes it harder for these pensions to meet they're based on 7% returns or something like that.
What's really ironic about America's government pension funds is they're doing everything that Warren Buffett tells them not to do. He says it's reasonable to expect a rate of return of, let's say, 6%. Well, these pension funds, and he's the greatest investor of all time, right? These pension funds are they're claiming that they're going to achieve rates of return of 7.25%. They're going to do that much better than Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has said, stay away from private equity. They're loading up on private equity. Warren Buffett is not a fan of Bitcoin. These pensions are apparently segueing into Bitcoin. So Warren Buffett says, stay away from high cost, high fee investment products. They're going increasingly into these higher cost investment products. So the way to summarize it is these state pension funds think they're smarter than Warren Buffett, and of course they're not.
It's just shocking. The other thing that is not just public pensions like teachers, firefighters, and police officers. Many private funds are going bankrupt or they're broke because my father, poor dad, wanted me to fly for United Airlines, and a lot of my peers out of the Marine Corps became pilots for United Airlines, but they found out there was nothing left in their pension. So my really good friends, we all flew for the Marine Corps together. They're looking for jobs at age 60, 65. And they're in retirement. Question is, what did school teach you about money? Nothing. They told you to trust the government or trust your 401k or save money, and it's kind of the worst possible advice